Then COVID hit 4 months later, and my podcast demographics went vertical. In the first 8 months, I'd passed 1 million downloads. We all have our bad days, and I'm still far from the perfect person I would like to be, but I'm 99% more at ease. First of all, life is unfair. No one ever said it should be fair, right? Everyone goes through bad periods. But if you're this mindful connection with your breathing at the end of the day and paying homage to who you are, best night's sleep ever.
Hello and welcome to Get a Shift On, your podcast all about career change and career transition, helping you see that change really is possible and that you don't have to be stuck in a job that is no longer working for you. Today, I am super pleased to welcome Martin Hewlett. Martin is a certified clinical hypnotherapist who found his way there after PTSD as a paramedic. And his podcast channel is Calming Anxiety. And I'm so excited to welcome you, Martin, because we've spoken off camera about calming anxiety and your experience with the podcast, and I can't wait to share that story. So welcome to the podcast and thank you for your time.
Hey, David, thank you. I'm really evangelical about A, telling people how to do podcasting, and B, how to be happier. Because no one's had more of a transition from being an angry, grumpy old man into being an obnoxiously happy and positive guy. And if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Well, that's really exciting to hear. And I think anybody listening and or watching would probably like to be happier. And I would certainly like to know how to better my own podcast. So I think we've got a fantastic chat ahead, all the way from kind of the entrepreneurial shift that you had, career change, and obviously to what you're doing now. Obviously, as I introduced you, we talked about the fact that you'd had some PTSD as a paramedic. Can you take us straight back to what happened? What was the final straw that actually led you to make the significant change in your life?
Well, let's not go too dark. So I had an eclectic breakdown at work after being promoted and then having it taken away without anyone telling me. I think that was through the main part of my divorce as well. So I was under a lot of stress, had a breakdown, did some very silly things, but the trust back then were very, very helpful. And after some counseling and therapy, they sent me for this technique called rewind, which was designed for the military for PTSD. PTSD was not caused by the job. It goes back to childhood and it surfaced. And this rewind therapy, this woman, Kathy, who I will always mention, I went in cynical, angry. I didn't feel I engaged with it, but when I came out, it was like she'd done a light bulb moment. And I suddenly realized what being normal and calm was all about. It was so transformative. I went back for another 5 sessions because they were paying for 6, purely because it was almost addictive. Fast forward, I thought, I've got to learn how to do this. I saw an advert for a weekend taster in hypnotherapy from Chris Fleet, our mutual friend who runs an amazing hypnotherapy practice and training center down in Paynton. Absolutely loved that weekend, signed up there, and then 2 years later, qualified as a clinical hypnotherapist, still whilst being a paramedic. And the beauty of doing a hypnotherapy course is it really teaches you to be aware of how you talk to yourself and how you talk to others. And as a paramedic, that was fantastic. I became way more understanding, empathic, and understanding of how I can dominate an outcome for a patient, how I speak to people around me, but more importantly, how I spoke to myself. The next pivotal part was Chris said, go and read this book, Key Person of Influence, because I'm a competitive soul, and that's putting it lightly. So I read that book, absolutely phenomenal book, if you want to get ahead in running your own business. And within it was the one line that changed everything about the course of my life. The author said, give something away for free to your customer base. And I thought about that. I had a YouTube channel. So I did 6 sort of meditation-based YouTube videos. And then by chance, I heard a guy called Pat Flynn. Now, if you want to get into podcasting as well, I recommend looking up Pat Flynn. He is the guru for what podcasting can do for your business. And with that pivot, I launched the Calming Anxiety podcast. But I was lucky. I launched it 6 years ago, October the 19th, 2019. Then COVID hit 4 months later, and my podcast demographics went vertical. In the first 8 months, I'd passed 1 million downloads. I was starting to earn purely off programmatic advertising, which I just ticked the box when I joined Spreaker, which is the podcasting host. And I remember my first day coming on station for a shift, and I'd earned 7 cents because it's all US dollars. And I told my colleagues, and they were all like, obviously having a good joke about it. Within 6 months, it was comparable to my NHS salary. And I'm like, you're not laughing now, are you? And it stayed quite high for about 1.5 years, up until January, about 4 years ago. January the 1st, it just fell off a cliff. Me and everyone else in my demographic. But I've been running it since. I left the NHS 3 years ago. I say left, let's say pushed, and then thought I'd run my hypnotherapy. But living in North Devon, rural area, not enough people, it wasn't working, and I wasn't that business orientated, and I'd suffered again 3 years ago because of what the NHS did. But then over the last 6 months, I've really looked at the show. I've been doing it more as a hobby. It was successful on its own right, with no marketing, no business knowledge, no understanding of the podcasting world. But as we talked off camera, I've now embraced AI, and I analyze everything. And rather than just recording a few shows and then traveling around in my van as I was doing, but I'm not now, I now work Monday to Friday. Even though the show's just 10 minutes a day, I basically spend a day analyzing the show I'm going to record, working on all the keywords, all the background stuff that most podcasters aren't aware of, so that I can elevate myself without a budget to the standard and the SEO tactics that these massive channels are leveraging. Because when you get into the nuts and bolts, when you do all the background work, you then start to think, oh, I've had that success. But if you do a random search on Spotify or Apple, and your show's not coming up when you're just typing in the generalized phrases like 10-minute daily meditation, you've got to ask yourself what's going wrong. So yeah, but we can go on to that a bit more. I'm very evangelical about the power of it. And I know a lot of people are going, oh, you don't need it, or it's just a buzzword. But for people like me and you, without this massive advertising budget that Calm, Headspace, people I'm up against have, it's the only way forward.
I agree completely. And I think anyone that doesn't embrace and utilize AI as it develops is actually going to fall behind in so many ways. And I don't want to get into the good and the bad and the politics of it all, because undoubtedly there is some of that that's going to happen. And then again, we talked about that off camera. And I think that's a whole podcast, probably a whole podcast, full stop, in its own right, actually. But I think using it to your advantage is just so important. I want to go back actually and just touch on key person of influence. Obviously, lots to unpick what you said there. Key person of influence, Daniel Priestley, I'm a big fan of as well. Can you explain to me, other than that one sentence in the book about giving away something for free, what was it that really spoke to you about maybe being an entrepreneur, about that career change in that book that was so pivotal for you?
Just being really honest, I can't remember. All right. I read it. I speed read. I read so many books back then in 2019, but I was going through so much at that point. I had to isolate for a year for a disease I didn't have, which was wonderful. Yeah, I had the best isolation or lockdown ever. But that book, no, I think I got to that line and I just thought, that's what I got to do. I didn't bother reading the rest because I don't want to model myself on other people and I don't want to compare myself. So I've never listened to another 10-minute meditation because I don't want to change what I do. And I know what I do has been really good because I'm just shy of 10 million downloads on a totally independent podcast. On Listen Notes, I'm a 0.5% global podcast. Think if I read other people's advice, calming anxiety wouldn't be what it is, which is an absolute, honest, empathic meditation from the soul of someone who's been broken a fair few times and is now really mindful of the power of how I feel about me. And I see that in the reviews and comments on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, or even the emails I get sent, is people write, "My God, you get it," because I speak to people. So yeah, I could go back. I might go back to the KPI book and a few others that I got at the time, because now that I'm working 9 to 5 at Calming Anxiety, I want to make it a big global success. I think I'm prepared to understand the business side more, but I was always aware and mindful. I don't want to change the core ethos of the product I produce, which is testament that it is good because of its reach in 58 countries that it's charted in. Don't like to brag. But there are 195 in the UN, and I can't hit all of them. Venezuela don't allow the show, and nor does China allow Spotify to collate that data. Um,
Just a
so
couple of
yes,
countries missing.
just a couple of countries missing. Yeah, so sorry. Read that book. I can't remember because I'm old and it's so long ago.
No, that's fine. I was just really interested to say I'm a big fan of his and all he does, and his
Mm.
books are great. And actually, he's a great advocate of AI as well, and he's really developing that. So I think it's so interesting to see that. For me, he spoke to me, I think, on a real personal level. You know, some of the bigger players in the field um, are almost untouchable. You know, billions of dollars flying around in private jets, and that's great. And I think that's clearly something to aspire to for some people. But to me, that just was never the reality. Whereas I felt Daniel Priestley was kind of more on, you know, more on a plane with what I was trying to do in my business. And I think to stay true to oneself, like you say, is also so important.
Yeah, there's I've been to 3 of the podcast events in London, and there is a niche of personality there that are so far removed from reality, and it is purely a money-making, almost pyramid scheme for them, that I didn't go this year and probably won't go again.
Just want to go back again. You talked about receiving the rewind therapy. That was something
Yeah.
new for me. Can you just talk a little bit about that? And for anyone who's experiencing burnout or trauma in their current jobs, especially in
Mm.
healthcare, because we know that's really where there is such a problem with that, sadly. How essential is that deep emotional healing before people can move forward and understand
Oh,
themselves?
believe it's so transformative. I never healed from what I went through as a child and being in a special care unit at 14. You think you have, but as things played out, I obviously haven't. Um, the diagnosis really helped with understanding me. And I think if you find the right therapist, and I think on this one, hypnotherapists are the way forward. It's not counseling people need. You don't need to talk about it. You need to put these fractured memories and inappropriate reactions in their right place. Very briefly, I was able to reconcile the things that triggered me or made me a bit of a dick as an adult was run by this 4-year-old, and they are now at rest. And that's what rewind does. You don't even have to talk about what you're feeling. So as a hypnotherapist, I bring that in. And for those of you who have been on the periphery or other hypnotherapists, it's coping to mastery. And it's about watching what you've been through or any trauma memories and viewing it in different scenarios with different emotions to be almost it's a vanilla thing. I've had people come to me with serious assaults and they then get to watch it over and over until they realize it's not them. That memory's in its place. and you can see their faces relax. The real them comes out. And it's beautiful. And that's what Rewind did for me. It allowed me no longer to be vitriolic to myself. My entire life, I'd gone through thinking disparatively about myself, words that we don't want to use here because then you'll be blacklisted. And in one session, it was just gone. You know, we all have our bad days, and I'm still far from the perfect person I would like to be, but I'm 99% more at ease, more understanding of how I can come across, and more aware of other people and their needs around me. And I'm able to focus more. You know, the fact that I can now work, I say work, that the fact that I can focus for more periods of time, even though I struggle with that. But I take lots of creatine. So, handy hint, I take 10 grams to 20 grams of creatine a day because the first 5 are for muscle and the rest really helps with anyone with any form of attention deficit. And I'm not labeling myself, I'm just saying I'm bloody lazy and I'm easily distracted. But using creatine and Google Gemini gets the work done for me.
I think that's really good to hear. And it's so interesting listening to that and the PTSD recovery, putting the child to bed, as it were, and really being able to move on. I think so many people suffer and don't understand why necessarily. Do you think
That's it.
that
You don't, much like my ex-wife, great friend of mine. She wished she'd have known because my big breakdown happened just after we separated. And then 3 years ago, she was actually the rock that saved me when I went through another. And, you know, she now sees that I've become the person she always thought I could be. But my eclectic personality got in the way of being a stable, more caring partner and colleague and friend.
do you
So,
think
yeah.
everybody should have some kind of therapy throughout their life to try and understand the way we are?
No, but I think when kids are 14, 15, 16, they should be taught how to be mindful and understand their own emotions, to understand all of us, how unique we are. They don't have to uh, embrace some of the more eclectic, fanciful trends that are going around over the last 5 years, but they can understand, hey, I feel like this today. No one else has to believe it. I don't go around with a badge saying what my personality issue is. It's just if I screw up, I'll go up to people and go, hey, I'm really sorry. Sometimes I have these kind of Tourette outbursts. But if kids were taught, and I've written to the schools in this area to say, look, can I come in? I get no response. If kids were taught rewind or mindfulness at 14, it would be wonderful. They would realize some days you wake up and you just feel like crap, right? It's not the end of the world. Okay. Some days you feel great. Some days people let you down. And it's not about them letting you down. It's they've let themselves down. And it's just understanding, you know, you're allowed to look in the mirror at times and think, I look fat, I look ugly, or whatever. These are normal human responses. I mean, let's face it, up until 100 years ago, we didn't have mirrors, did we? So no one looked in the mirror to be self-critical. Yeah, what really chuffs me, one of my lives is my martial arts. And last weekend, I was back in Sussex as an umpire for an English Open Taekwondo competition. And there are 2 young competitors there. They're 13. They've both been out to the World Cup in Argentina last year and become overall world champions. They went out to the World Championships in Croatia last month, and one of them became overall female world champion. And they both got golds last weekend at this ITF English. Both of them listened to my podcast the night before. And they listen to my podcast all the time. And it helps them put all of their competitiveness to one side so they can sleep. That's what I'd like. More kids to listen to it to help them relax in the evening.
I think that's so important. And I see that in my own children and
Mm.
the need to have that switch off, to be able to
Yeah.
decompress, to look and go, do you know what? Today was a good day, bad day, indifferent day. but whatever kind of day it is, it's okay. And I'm allowed to feel that way. And I'll often say
Yeah.
that to my kids. I've got teenage children. So it's life is a constant battle of one sort or another. Love them dearly, of course. But it is that battle. And, we'll say to them, be a teenager. That's fine. If you feel like you're having a crappy day, not a problem. Go do whatever you need to do. Don't be rude. That is my one rule. But go have it. It's fine. Go have that time. For anyone listening, for themselves, for parents or for children, what techniques can people adopt, other than listening to your podcast, to help them with some of that anxiety and to have some of that stillness?
I think it is at the end of every single day when you go to bed, away from your phone, all right, is either mindfully on your own, relax and connect with your body and just do a whole body relaxation. The one thing and my competitiveness really helps with this one. I do this breathing cycle. So you count and you'll breathe in for 5, hold for 2, out for 7. And then after a minute or two, you start to elongate the counts. So I can get my breathing rate down to 2 a minute. So I breathe in for 13, hold for 2, out for 15. As a paramedic, if I went to someone who had a rest rate of 2, I'd be jumping up and down I'd be bagging them, that's for sure. And this mindful connection with your breathing at the end of the day and paying homage to who you are, best night's sleep ever. Really is. It's just like, just to count the breathing, hold it, and then that slow, relaxed out breath. And as soon as you slow that down, you slow your heart rate down, and then you slow your brainwave activity. Rather than going to bed with all this frustration, all this social media. No, you need to have time out or read a book, not on a Kindle. Okay. Well, not on a phone or a computer. Kindles are good because that's a soft light. And then I think that for parents, years ago, I had a relationship. Partner had younger kids, and I tried to introduce reading before bedtime, but they all went back to doing TikTok. And I'm like, there's no hope. It's like TikTok, God's sake.
Yeah, super hard, super hard. Again, I recognize that in my own kids. And that, as some of that is, absolute failure in some respects as a parent, because maybe it's easier. We all have long days. I would love to adopt a better kind of bedtime routine. When they were younger, of course, we read stories, we had fun before bed, we relaxed. I think it is very much harder now. I don't really want to go into it because I'm sure I know how the conversation will go. But very quickly, what are your thoughts on social media, the constant presence of noise and phones that we all have to deal with? And how do we get away from that? And is it really the cause of
It's
so much angst?
good Lord, yeah. Okay, so what you should do as an experiment, every parent should set up a brand new TikTok account and give yourself the age demographic of a 14-year-old girl, right? And start to see the utter abhorrent content that is being pushed to that demographic. I mean, I don't have TikTok because of my own political beliefs that, the content we get in the West on TikTok is completely 100% reversal for what kids in China get. Maybe parents need to educate themselves on what their kids are watching. My kids were young. So my kids are 31 and 33. But the internet was coming in when they were teens. Now, because one of my first career roles was IT and software engineering for the MOD, when we got the internet, I told them that I was monitoring everything. Sorry, Jake and Tom, I wasn't.
Truth is out.
So if kids realize you've got a parental filter, that's half the battle. When I was with my last partner and her son was 10 and she's on TikTok and she's going, oh, we can't watch that. Well, he's already seen a tenth of a second.
Yeah.
So he's going to start looking for that. And it's so easy. I mean, if parents can turn the Wi-Fi off, there's plenty of software out there to monitor it. And it's really important. So last year, I went out to Google New York for the Digital for Good Summit. And this is an amazing charity that goes around all the schools teaching other children to be ambassadors. And it's about online safety and bullying. And we need that in the UK. We don't. I am so pleased I do not have young children now. It must be an absolute minefield for people like you trying to think, what are my kids doing? You know, where's the line between saying, I need to check the phone each night, right? Or do you put a VPN on to scramble things? And, you can't trust young boys. We were all young boys once. Let's not try to pretend, oh, he says he's not going to look. It's part of human DNA nature, but it's vulgar what's out there, and it's very dark. There's so much. No wonder kids are going a bit stressed.
And I think it's really difficult for parents, especially of my era, where we are the bridge generation, where we had no tech compared to where we are
Mm.
now with tech in abundance. My kids have no concept of what it was like to not have a phone. And, we have the classic conversation, oh, back in my day, there was nothing. And they genuinely can't actually believe that there wasn't, and it wasn't. They don't see it. I was talking just last night to a friend of mine. I lived in America for a while in the early 2000s, and I rocked up in Boston with my suitcase, my tuck box, my worldly possessions, and the only thing I had was a BlackBerry, which had BlackBerry Messenger. And I
Mm.
stood on a street corner and waited for my host family, who I'd found through Craigslist, to come and pick me up. I had no idea where I was. I had no idea who they were. And that was it. But there was no apps to find anything. There was no Uber. Everything was such early days. So I remember what it was like to do that. My kids just come back from Turkey. They've had an amazing time. They've taken photos. We've talked while they've been away. That's great. There is a benefit to it. But I do see the flip side. And actually, it's very worrying because we as a generation are trying to control our anxiety because we look at it as well. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't ever look at TikTok, Instagram. I doom scroll the same as anybody else. And that obviously causes my own thoughts and beliefs and problems and anxiety. But I'm also trying to manage my children, knowing what I see. I see some of what they see because we are fairly strict in many respects, but it's hard to juggle that balance. And I think learning those coping mechanisms for all of us is so important. Um, and deep breathing techniques, listening to podcasts such as yours can only help. And actually, there is hope. I think that it will change because I see a change in my children compared to my nieces and nephews who sit kind of mid to late 20s. And I think there is already a difference. And I hope that there is a transformation and it helps people to understand there is a relief from the anxiety if you allow it to happen and you have it managed.
Yeah, I think there's more there, though, to help kids nowadays. I mean, if I'd have had my podcast or Calm or Headspace when I was 14, wow, that would have massively helped. So, there's a really good positive. It's very easy for us. And I think we're biologically geared always to look for the danger so we stay safe. But when we open our minds to it and search, there is an amazing amount of positivity and goodness on the internet. And it's been there when I've had my dark moments. There's an Australian guy doing deep sleep meditation podcasts. I tried a few and his voice really resonated. So kids just need to look, like your kids, you might now go, well, what would help you? When mum and dad aren't around. So your role now is to prepare them for when they leave home, if they ever leave home.
Well, according to my eldest, she's going ASAP. So
Yeah, well, then that's it. So she might go at 18 off to university. All right. So now's the time to give her the skills to deal with being an independent adult, especially in a world where so much negativity is pushed, but give her the skills to find the positive. And for when she's having those moments, which she will, when a boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up with her, when she doesn't get the grade she wants, how she can come and center herself and go, actually, I've got this, you know, I'm me. As long as she wakes up every day with a view, today could be the best day of my life. I'm going to be happy and positive, no matter what comes my way. Those are skills that parents ought to give kids.
Do you think
And
parents are
how to
missing
cook on
those
a
skills?
budget. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, yeah, I see. You know, when I used to be a paramedic mentor and you'd get these 18-year-olds coming out on the trucks who don't know how to cook. And you think, what have you done? You know, you've left home and the basic skills are cooking, cleaning, and basically just staying on top of your finances. Those are the skills parents should be teaching their kids. And I think that's lost nowadays.
And do you think the education system has a place to play in that? Or do you think it should
Yeah.
all be at home?
No, no, no. I think it should be a symbiotic relationship. You know, that parents no longer support the schools because we've got basically a demographic of kids that had been failed who've now got their kids at school. They're going, yeah, school's rubbish. And the schools have an agenda all of their own, which may or may not be political, but let's not go down that one. We said we weren't going to talk politics, but I
Yeah,
saw
let's.
it. I saw what the schools were teaching during lockdown. Yeah, but it would be nice to see a more holistic shuffle in what education should be, working with the parents, and just prepping. Education should be about prepping you for life at 18 or 16 and not focus on trying to give you qualifications to get into university, to get a degree that will not benefit you whatsoever, right? But get you in debt. You know I'm old. I'm 60. When I was doing A levels, which was fairly rare, the ones doing A levels were going off to get degrees to become engineers. This sounds right way, doctors, pilots. That's what your degree was for, not a degree in being a nurse or a paramedic. And this will be contentious, which you don't need to do
I
that
agree.
job. I just never understood it. Having been a paramedic for over 20 years, you do not need a degree. You need common sense, you need to be empathic, and you need not to be worried when someone's got an arm that's in a different room. You know, you just get on and do the job. That'll wind them up.
You know what? Again, as you had this conversation last night, my degree is in radiotherapy.
All right, yeah.
I did my degree early 2000s. It was only made a degree in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And now you can do your master's, you can do a PhD. And I'm all for education, I'm all for personal development. But there comes a point, especially in healthcare, as you say, nurses and paramedics and radiographers do not need a degree to be able
Right.
to carry out and function as that basic healthcare professional. And the fact that you
Because
can go and do a degree and a master's and go in at a high level, having probably never really seen the patient properly or done some of that basic nursing and care function, it blows my mind.
as we would say, the magic camera people, all you're doing is pressing a button. It's the consultant that does the work and looks at it. All right. And you need a degree for that. And the same with me. I've got a degree for putting a plaster on someone. And let's bring the nurses in. You don't need a degree to make a bed. Now I've upset everyone.
Well, good. I like it and I'm glad. And I think that's right. And do you know what? The proof, though, Martin, the proof is that I speak to people on a weekly basis who are in that situation, who actually are not doing the job that they thought they were going to be doing because they've been through the system, they've done the education, they've got a degree, but actually it turns out that it's not quite what they thought it was going to be. And they are now managers, pen pushers. You know, they don't see patients. They don't actually do the job that they thought they were going to do in the first place. And that is why they're
They're just,
looking to get out.
yeah. The dropout rate for paramedics now is sky high because with that degree, they can go and work out of a GP surgery on band 7. But, you know, that's by the by. And sorry, if people are wondering why I'm wobbling around, I have a Weimaraner at my legs. All right. Bess,
As I say, let's please
come here.
see.
In camera. There you go.
Look
Yeah.
at that face.
Hello. She's a tart.
It's always nice to see a dog on the show. Mine usually makes an entrance, but I have to shut the door, and I heard him come in from a walk and shake. So it's probably raining outside. So that's
Yeah.
it's
I got soaked this morning. It was lovely.
it is yeah, it's one of those days, isn't it? I did see a beautiful sunrise even, which was absolutely lovely. Talking on then from people who find themselves stuck in a career
Hmm.
and want to look and start their own business. That's obviously where I kind of come in and help. But because of the fear of failure and the self doubt, how do you think using guided meditation, positive affirmations really can work to build that kind of unshakable confidence that they need to move forward and actually make that change?
Yeah. Right. So I've gone through many bits of thinking I'm not succeeding. I have failed. No amount of affirmations is going to change that. What is going to change it is hard work. It really is. And as we keep saying, the AI, we have so many tools now to compete with big businesses, especially, if we're doing this digital online stuff. So if I was about to launch a podcast, or if I had someone come to me and go, Mark, I want to launch a podcast, it's going to be in a particular niche. I go, great, go off, get that name, set that up, and then spend a month analyzing all the big ones, not the little ones, because who wants to compete against the small one? You want to be a success, don't you? Analyze it. Plan out your first 10 shows. Work out, are you going to interview or are you going to be solo? Because there's some great podcasts out there on history and things like that, which are all one-man bands. Then record your 10 shows and then use Notebook LM to analyze them against your competitors and then record them again. Work out which platform you want to be on. Now, I keep getting enticed by Spotify, but I like Spreaker. Spreaker through and through. It's the third largest in the world. Understand that platform and how it shares. And I don't just mean it pushes the RSS out, which, that's child's play, is the tagging system, is being able to get the transcript of every show embedded into the audio that goes out, so that once you've uploaded them, you're not going to launch them. You're going to give it another couple of weeks so that Google and all the other systems will trawl it before it's even out there. So it's indexed, ready to go. And then you will always launch with 5 shows minimum, right? Because if I listen, say to yours, if I came across yours and I go, I like that, I'll want to listen to another straight away. So you'd never launch with 1 or 2 shows. I did though.
I
But,
launched with 3.
you know, I didn't know back then, but I mean, I would do it so differently now. And I think it would be a massive success now. But we all say that with hindsight. It's wonderful. So I would have that. And I would then have already lined up the next 20 shows that you're going to do whilst the first 5 are out there. And then the next 5 are scheduled so that you're ahead of the curve. And being ahead of the curve, I've got shows recorded up until January next year. All right. So if I'm ill, and I've been caught out once before because I very rarely get chest infections, but I did. And it would take me a day to record a show between coughs. So batch everything up and just plan and analyze and use Gemini, ChatGPT to critique your work. And they're very good at it. It is amazing. And it's lovely when it comes back and go, this is a fantastic idea. And then it lists why. And then analyze the shows afterwards. So my show's been up there and now it's dropped down. I used to be getting 20,000 downloads every single day, day in, day out. I was hitting 1 million every other month. And now it's not. It's about 2,000. But over the last few months, since I incorporated AI as a strategic tool to look at all the long tail keywords and phrases, and if you don't know about that, go off and learn. Because you cannot launch a podcast without understanding what these are. My show is grown recently. The last it's dropped down, but it's then looking over a longer period. So I've I've gone up 10% overall on downloads over the last 3 months, which is fantastic growth, I think, on a channel that's getting a lot of views anyway. And my YouTube stats, I've started to see the graph go up. Slow, but it's not going down and it's not staying static. And I put that all down to the fact that Google is now able to index my shows more effectively because the transcript from every single show is up there now over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Something I hadn't done, something that was available to me for the last 6 years. I just didn't realize I could do it and I didn't know how to.
Where are you actually putting those transcripts?
So I don't know how you do it on Spotify because I don't know the back end of that. But on Spreaker, on the dashboard page, when I load a show in, I can then load the description after the audio file. That is all done via Gemini. So it's looking at what's trending and it writes it so organically. It's wonderful. And then below it is my standard fill in of links and affiliate links and the latest promo. Then you've got tags where you can put 20, and these can be long tail ones. So not just individual words, but it could be 10-minute guided meditation. That's one tag. That's what people are looking for. And they always change and they're specific to each podcast. Again, I used to just leave 20 in there that were just there. And then right down at the bottom of the page, it says transcript and it gives you different types. And the one you want is an SRT file because it's got the time codes on all of it. And then there's another, it's a free option on Spreaker. I upload my audio file, it transcribes it and then embeds that link so that when you're incognito, my show's starting to crop up more and more higher and higher. For generic terms, I mean, if you type in calming anxiety podcast, yeah, I'm like the first 30 pages, but that's not how it should be done. If you go on incognito on YouTube and type in the specific title to my show, yes, it comes up. But if you just type in 10-minute guided meditation, I'm like 200 down the bottom, and that's got to change. That's why indexing everything for Google and YouTube is crucial, I think, to any podcast success. You know, you could end up with having the best interview technique, the best voice in your niche, David, but if it's not indexed, it can't be found. Yeah, so starting a podcast, you've got, you know, it's not about whether your podcast is good, will be a success, is can it be found? And you've got to understand those processes for it to be found. And I've seen that work in real-time data now. So when anyone starts out, yes, it's going to be found at some point, but I've seen a 6-year podcast that's running along at 50,000 downloads a month suddenly spike because I've paid attention to doing it properly.
Amazing. I think that's such, personally, I'm going to go away. I've written some notes and I will certainly be looking to see what I can. And we spoke previously and I've started to kind of do some of that. And I think that's really exciting. Podcasting was never in the plans for myself, for my business, but it is now. And therefore it needs to have that strategic look and understanding behind it. But I think people should take that further into business as a whole and try and understand as much as you can about how you can elevate yourself above the competition. You're always going to have competition. There is so little original thought, I think. So original ideas don't really exist. They're few and far between. So you're going to have competitors, and it's how you understand, how you rise above that, what makes you different, how you can learn the systems to elevate yourself above and beyond just sitting there and earning, a happy little, really
Well,
push yourself.
maybe.
And you're competitive, so you understand that drive to want to do more. And when you see the numbers, and I see it, and I see things start to tick up, and I'm like, right, how do I push and how do I grow from here?
Yeah. Maybe I'll go back to my storage unit and find KPI and read it again properly because I'm in a place now. Before it was just like, I record it, I go to work as a paramedic. Hey, I've got a success. Now I'm semi-retired, but so many people listen to it and say, why isn't this bigger? And it's purely down to the fact that I've not put the effort in to make it bigger. So the difference now is me actually putting the effort in as and when I can with who I am, and that sometimes I need 3 or 4 days off to do nothing if I overdo it.
Are you
Yeah.
happy with who you are now?
Oh, good Lord, yes. Although you've got to be careful not to sound pompous or arrogant. I like who I am. I am the person I always wanted to be. Do I still have moments? Yeah. um, but whereas they used to be weekly, there again, I used to be in a public service and I'd meet people all the time. Now I can squirrel away into either the home I'm in or the van that I record in. But I'd say becoming mindful makes you appreciate time, makes you appreciate who you are once you've let those demons go. And you're kinder to yourself when you make mistakes because no one's perfect. And, when I make mistakes now, I'm kind to it. So I'm fairly clumsy. If I knock anything over, that would really set me off for a day or two. But now I just go, clear that up. And I'm like that with other friends around me when things go wrong. I go, well, no need to be stressed, no need to be angry. Anger gets us nowhere. It's probably the worst emotion going. It serves no purpose unless you're in the middle of a tournament and you're fighting. All that stuff about, martial artists, you're so calm. No, we're not.
I want to just really finish with some advice for anyone who is struggling. And I think there's been a lot that we talked about, and I hope that people have taken something from it. I certainly have. One sentence, really. What would you say is the most helpful advice for someone who is really, really struggling and doesn't know the first steps to take?
First of all, life is unfair. No one ever said it should be fair. Everyone goes through bad periods. But you're if you're in a job that you really detest, okay, you can chop and change. I know for younger, say there's dads out there and a mortgage, they've got bills, that's difficult. But you can start to make a plan because when you've got hope and a dream, that'll carry you through those really bad days. I've quit a few jobs in my past because I just thought, no, and they were well paying jobs, but I didn't have the responsibility of parenthood and a partner. Find something that you really think you'd be passionate about and then do it. And don't listen to anyone else who go, no, you shouldn't do that, right? That I've listened to too many people saying, because I used to fly paramotors, and this is a great one. And I had a mate at work, he go, oh, you don't want to do that anymore. It's dangerous. Come and do this. And I stupidly listened and I sold my kit and I took up something else. And I remember the second time I was doing this new event, I was like, why did I listen to someone else? That's not my dream. It's never been my dream. And I think we're so easily pressured into other people's dreams and their opinions. You have one shot at life, and sometimes you get it wrong, but that doesn't mean you have to stay there for the rest of it. When people talk to me over an extended period of time and I go, what have you done? And I'd get this a lot. People go, has he really? And I do. Taught myself to fly paramotors and I've flown around the UK and France. I've run a podcast. I've run a radio station. I've been a push bike courier. I was a software engineer. I've been a martial arts instructor at very successful schools and then thought, nah, I'm now a house husband. I want to be a paramedic. And I became a paramedic at 36, 37. I just thought, I want to do that. So I went and did it. Was it easy? No, because I'm not the brightest guy. I'm not academic and I really struggled, but I wanted to do it. Did I listen to people who said you shouldn't do it? No. And the podcast, even people at work, other guys who, we don't get on with everyone, they'd come in and go, I listened to your show last night. Thank you, Martin. Right. So I'm going to hate saying this. Follow your truth. If you have a dream, the only person stopping you succeeding is you. Right? Really. Unless you're blind like me, yeah, you can't be a fireman or you can't be a fighter pilot within realism. But if you want to start a podcast of something you're really passionate about, why wouldn't you be the most successful person at it? If you put your absolute heart, soul, energy into it with all the things we've discussed, use all the AIs, they're free. you can do it. Really. And I've realized that when, mine dropped off, and now I'm realizing, well, I haven't really put any effort into marketing it. And now I am. Without money. It's not, I'm not paying for advertising. I refuse to do that at the moment. Yeah, do it. And don't give up when it doesn't explode, right? Mine's dropped off. I could show you the graph. Yeah.
Incredible. Thank you. I think just to keep at it is so important, just to keep going, whatever you're doing, if it is what you
Yeah.
want to do, and you said follow your truth, I think is so important for people. I talk a lot about not listening to the doubters. They're projecting their own fear onto us, and it's so easy to then give up. And I think
Yeah.
that's so, if it's what you want to do, go and do it.
The other thing is, don't tell your friends and family. They're not going to listen. They're not going to be, no, not as in they're not going to listen. They're not going to support your show. They are not the listeners you want, right? You want, maybe in the first month, maybe, or whatever, 100 subscribers that will listen 100% of the time. You don't want Spotify. I've got 65,000 followers and I might get 2,000 listens. That's not a good ratio. YouTube, I've now got 17,500 subscribers with about 150 to 200 views a day. That's not what I want, because about a year ago, I did one of their paid promos. It works. It got me an awful lot of subscribers, but they don't engage. They're probably bots. All right. So work on it organically. Join a podcast.
Take advice from others who know what they're
Yeah.
doing, who know what they're doing. And that's the difference. Not your mum, your dad, your brother, your sister, your mate down the pub. Take advice from those that know what they're doing
This
and have been there.
This isn't a paid bit, okay? And feel free to cut this out now. Pat Flynn runs Smart Passive Income. He runs the SPI 2.0 podcast as well. I believe he's still got free courses on his website. Do that. If you're about to launch a podcast, go and look at SPI or Pat Flynn, FLYNN, I believe. But he's out there. His info will really help you. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. All right. Tell him I sent you.
I won't cut that out because I need to remember that for myself. Martin,
Absolutely.
thank you
Really good call.
so much for your time, your energy. I love what you're doing. I think it's so important for people. And I'm certainly going to go away and get my kids to listen and see what we can do to change it. And for myself as well. I think we all need that stillness and that anxiety relief from just day-to-day overwhelm and the struggles that we have in the world that we live in. So thank you. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to the dogs for making an appearance as well.
He's asleep now. Thanks, Dave. Really, best of luck with your podcast as well.
Thank you.
All right. I want to see your graph do that now.
I am going away to work on it right now. Martin, again, thank you ever so much.
Take care. Bye.